Now for the next programming piece, we are going to switch to a speaker from Germany, and she's going to be with us on Zoom, and the stream will kind of feed into the theater on the big screen. Imke Woelk, she is a principal and creative director at Imke Woelk and Partners in Berlin. She's a former colleague of mine. I studied with her together in Germany. Imke Woelk is a German architect and artist who deals with the positioning of the human habitat in the Anthropocene. In 2003, she was holding the Rome Prize Villa Massimo in architecture. Woelk studied architecture at the Leibniz University in Hanover, the Technical University of Braunschweig, and the Università Nuova di Venezia. She worked with Maximilio Fuchsas in Rome, with William Alsop in London. In 2005, she founded the Berlin office Imke Woelk and Partners, which combines architecture, art, planning, practice, and research. Imke Woelk has taught, conducted research for educational institutions in Germany, United Kingdom, Denmark, Italy, and was a visiting professor at Doosan Women's University in Seoul, South Korea. She received her PhD from the Technical University in Berlin under Finn Geipel and Andre Lepek in 2010, and successfully completed 2018 the class Architectural Imagination at Harvard GSD under Michael Hayes. She was appointed to the Art Advisory Committee by the Berlin Senate Department for Culture in 2016 and was holding the jury chairmanship of the Czech National Architecture Award 2019. Her video work, After All, The Culture of Nature, was part of the official AFFIV selection of the Arts Festival in Cannes in 2019. In 2020, she was appointed as a member of Deutscher Werkbund. And with this, it's my distinct pleasure to introduce Imke to you. We are very long and old friends. Hi, Imke. Good to see you.
Thank you very much. Our culture abhors the world, stated the French mathematician and philosopher Michel Serres in his book, The Natural Contract. What he's referring to is the fact that we humans, with the forms of culture we developed, react to our environment with reluctance. On the cover of his publication, you can see a painting by Francisco de Goya. Caught up in our all too human history, we have hardly noticed that through our devastation of nature, an opponent has grown up, who is now fighting back. Human history invades nature. Nature invades human history, but we all still live in denial. I collected an archive of things. They are not rare things, but things that are rarely collected. Plastic objects of all kinds, picked up from the sea, worked with sand and salt by the forces of nature. Our so-called modernity, a subject of the humanities and social science, was characterized by an unshakable belief in the creative power of man. Where has that gotten us? What do you think? Is this trash or is it art? In any case, it was created by human and non-human forces. Why does our encounter with nature, be it inanimate nature, plants or animals, not lead to a true relationship at eye level? This image from my video, The Culture of Nature, shows a Greek torso. It is part of the collection of the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York. The Met has one of the most important art historic collections in the world. It's an universal museum with the claim to completeness towards its collections, areas, and epochs. Complete, unfortunately, only in terms of man-made cultural objects. Here you can see a conglomerate from my archive, a fire made it out of plastic sheets, films lying on top of each other. This object is a proxy for a bygone area that brought light to an incredible amount of trash. But do you see what the forces of nature have made out of it? In an irritating way, this sculpture resembles a highly valued cultural artifact of past civilization. Wouldn't it make sense to abandon the self-made distinction between nature and culture? What if this could develop into a positive and synergetic relationship? Would it bring a shift in perspective? A helpful concept that could free us from an impasse? What you see here is a simple stone formed by the action of nature, created from a mixture of mineral grains, organic and inorganic remains of living organisms. Couldn't it just be as well a fragment of a Greek sculpture? For example, from this Venus, Kallipaigos, a marble statue from the 1st century BC. These stills are from my video hybridization. You see PET bottles smashed by the sea, which now thrown back onto the rocks seem to merge with their natural environment. They resemble algae, these photosynthetic organisms, don't they? But instead they form a rather toxic hybridity with nature. We know that for a long time because we found microplastics in our blood. What if these bottles were made of biodegradable material and were actually capable of producing oxygen? Did you know that Coca-Cola was discovered by an accident? Actually, the inventor was looking for a syrup that could relieve headaches. What would this invention have done for the clean line of our world's oceans? How can we reach such a win-win situation? The entire world within us and outside of us is made out of interactions that endlessly line up, react, and act upon each other. Working with these interactions would allow us to create a healthy unity for all life. This could include hybrid components, as visible here in one of my collages, which are known to us from natural evolutionary processes. They are even crucial for the establishment of genetic diversity within species. The outlines of an urban future, understood in this way, could be sketched if biology, technology, and culture were thought together. Back to architecture, our profession. What if architecture were also composed of such opposites? If it had a dual origin and possessed both human and non-human roots? What could hybrid building structures look like? Haven't there been role models for this for a long time? Perhaps like this ancient building, Madain Salih, in the desert of Saudi Arabia. Such a structure is neither entirely man-made, nor is it of natural origin. Rather, it is a result of long-term and complex interactions between human collectives, environmental forces, and the action of other species that are themselves actors in the historical process of space. Or here, in this art gallery, recently built by the Indian architect, by Krishna Doshi in Ahmedabad, what would be the influence of an environment that seems to be the embodiment of a natural and at the same time is a cultural artifact? Would it be possible in this way to also preserve the identity and character of a particular region? Please see how inconspicuously something like this could look like. These large accumulations, about 1,000 years before Christ, run through the middle of a deforested area in the Amazon. They were discovered in the 1980s by the photoarchaeologist Stephen Rustain. From the ground, this huge geometric structure is barely perceptible and it bleeds into its surrounding like a natural topographical feature. From the bird's eye view, however, the exact architectural arrangement is clearly visible as an artificial inscription on the surface of the earth. Isn't that interesting? An area like that, like this one in the Amazon, has so profoundly shaped our idea of a pristine nature as actually a work of human culture. Doesn't that open up new possibilities for the conception of spatial design as a whole? The boundaries between domesticated and wild, cultivated and uncultivated, or artificial and natural, are not sharply drawn in the landscape. Can architecture become a part of a living structure and thus be completely different in its formal and programmatic character from the traditional idea of a building? So much that the untrained eye can hardly recognize it as architecture, much less perceive the associated infrastructure and landscaping, as in this building designed for the extension of the new National Gallery in Berlin. We humans should start again to see our relationships with the environment and with other living beings as a continuum in which humans are the elements of a larger social space, a space that includes them, plants and spirits. What would it be like if we understood cooperation with nature as a common cultural mission? I would like to briefly introduce Hypercity as a visionary concept that deals with the development of urbanization corridors in a natural space. Very often my own reflections on the subjects start with painting. Conceptual, programmatic, and formal principles can be brought together in this abstract way for the first time. Hypercity is a model for a new metropolitan region that could develop along a highway. On this map, you can see the entire highway network in Germany. At the top right is the A24 between Berlin and Hamburg. This highway became the starting point of the project. The diagram on the left shows the existing wildlife corridors that should not be disturbed by urbanization. In the middle, the existing infrastructure networks of transport and railroads. The diagram on the right marks the spatial location of the new multipolar city along an emission-free A24. Hypercity is conceived as an urban model that incorporates existing mobility infrastructures and wildlife corridors. This idea is based on the need to designate 50% of the Earth's surface as a pristine natural space to protect biodiversity. This city establishes an organizing principle for a new urban form through the creation of gradual crossings, bridges, and reserves. All spatial structures for work, leisure, and living are closely linked to it. Today, the long distances to be covered by car between residential areas, shopping and logistics centers, production facilities, and leisure parks cause a lot of traffic with high CO2 emissions. We have to change this by bringing functions together, by locating them where many services and programs already exist. The urban growth is not centralized, but embedded in an interlocking biotope in multiple ways and closely linked to the infrastructures. This type of a city is a building complex and a landscape at the same time. It creates a new urban concept that combines and unites natural space, agriculture, and urbanity. It presents itself as an alternative to the traditional centralized urban model with its logistical and social challenges we all know. This urban space contains ecological corridors and produces regenerative energies. The questions for us planners is, how do we have to design to avoid negative consequences for the life of others? The most important of all is that a city understood in this way connects people with ecosystems and create meeting spaces with flora and fauna. Architecture has to include non-human animals as users and inhabitants and has to organize our spatial coexistence. We have to put human standards in relation to those of millions of other living beings. Our survival depends on their existence. Planning can no longer be understood as an expression of human expansion, but as practices that contribute to the conservation of our Earth biotopes. This puts our coherent world in attention and prevents uniformity, agony, and boredom. Every single place has the potential to initiate this form of interaction and communication between humans, animals, and plants. It does not matter if these places consist of streets or valleys or forests. Even in big cities, this dissolution of boundaries can be realized. On the contrary, it is precisely good that polarities are created in this way, variations of the same quality in different scales and materials. As planners, we should create offerings and open up new opportunities and allow other life on this planet to discover resources. We will need lawyers, ecologists, biologists, environmental, social scientists, and similar profiles. And we will need symbiotic relationships as survival strategies for the design of regenerative economic models, comprehensive ecosystems, cross-species urbanities, and new approaches to their realization. in order to find resilient ways to live together, new perspectives must be developed that create a shift in spatial planning towards interspecies equality. The next 8 years are critical for this life-sustaining evolution, but this will not be enough. Thank you very much.